Tracy.
Oh, yeah. I find this fascinating. I love all this. You've had your hair cut.
I have had my hair cut. It's so fun to be able
nice.
to see you.
I know, it's fantastic. I love it. I mean, it's the picture behind you is obviously where you sit when you do the stuff with
when I do
Emma
Chillin
and everything.
with Adam, yeah.
Right. So can we start chatting about your story now? Because
Sure.
people will be really interested to hear that. Are you okay to talk about it?
Sure. Okay. Yeah. Well, I am Cindy Williams Adams. My son Adam. That right there just blows my mind, okay? His name was Adam, I am Adams. How did that happen?
Yeah.
Another synchronicity. That was no accident. My son Adam, Hamel, transitioned as a result of injuries sustained in a car accident in January 2011. Adam was an organ donor. He spent 4 days on life support, and during those 4 days, he kept showing us that he is still here.
Right.
You know, through a number of synchronicities. One of the synchronicities, in hindsight, is the fact that I now carry the name that I carefully chose for my beloved firstborn son. That child's name was so carefully considered, I can't even tell you. And it just blows my mind that I married Greg Adams in 2007, just say 3.5 years before Adam transitioned. So by the time Adam transitioned, I had his name. I was Adams.
Amazing, isn't it?
It is.
So when you were talking about the happenings when around the time when Adam had his accident, so. Do you mind me talking about the details of it? Is that okay?
No,
That's all right.
no. One of the things I can share with you is that I always had a feeling I would lose a child. I always had a feeling I would. It's like I always sensed there would be this thing that divided my life in half, and I was always worried that I would lose a child. So I would have to say somewhere inside me I knew. And I would wonder which one it is. And the odd thing is, in hindsight, Adam was the one who kept saying he was going to have the short life.
Really? So what was Adam like as a child? Give us a bit of a clue as to what he was like as a child, and because I think you said, didn't you, that he was a bit quirky and a bit different, wasn't he?
He was a divergent thinker. He was just unusual. He was just different. Adam was his own unique person, and he stepped to the beat of a different drummer, and he was not going to compromise and be who he wasn't for anybody. He lived his truth. He's one of the few people that I know personally who lived his truth, and it was a very difficult life for him because Adam was so loving. He had such a big, tender heart, but he also had a quick temper, and he just had no patience for people who were mean to each other or who mistreated each other. He didn't have a use for labels. He didn't have a use for judgment. He didn't judge people based on their behavior, their skin color, who they love. He was just all about, letting everybody be who they wanted to be. And in this day and age, that just doesn't fly. Not only do people mostly not let you be who you want to be. As a child, they humiliate you and they tease you and bully you if you don't fit in. He didn't experience as much of that kind of thing as other people did. But Adam was a cute little boy. He was super smart. He was funny. He was a divergent thinker. But he also had a serotonin deficit. Now, this is something he shared after he crossed over. So he had some differences in his brain chemistry that caused him to perceive things differently than other people did. He was also an empath. And what that means is he picked up on other people's energies and their feelings and thoughts and emotions. So he's sort of like a magnet for that. And he didn't understand it at all because he did not know what was happening to him. And at the time Adam was a child, I did not know what an empath was either. So the bottom line is, you know, he could be fine 1 minute and then I could take him out somewhere and all of a sudden he wasn't fine because he has absorbed the energies of the people around him. And all of a sudden he'd just be out of sorts. You know, his leg would just be, his foot would be tapping like this, his leg would be bouncing, you know, he was just out of sorts. He did not know how to protect himself from receiving other people's energy. He didn't know how to tell himself apart from those other thoughts and feelings. He didn't know how to clear his energy field. You know, he began to know a little bit more about this closer to the time that he transitioned, which was at age 27. Right. But it was very
so, Cindy,
difficult for him.
Yeah. So were you always quite heavily into the spiritual stuff and like, you know, how you are now? And to me, that I'd need to know a bit more about that. But have you always been quite in touch with the spiritual side of yourself, in that you know about the energy stuff and all of that?
You know, I was always fascinated with it. I am the daughter of a Pentecostal preacher, so my initial exposure to spirituality was, you know, being taken to a Pentecostal church as a child and watching people speak in tongues and throw the Bibles in the air. And you know what really stuck with me the most was watching people say one thing and do another. So I really got indoctrinated into what hypocrisy looks like as a child. So I really didn't have much use for religion. Church was a place where you went, where you lied about what you did during the week, and then you promised to do one thing and went out and did another. And that was my experience. I mean, and then when I would be invited to church, the first thing they want to know was how awful you are, and they drag you down on your knees in the front so you can tell everybody. I mean, I really had traumatic experiences. I did not have warm, fuzzy experiences with religion. Now, in terms of spirituality, I think I have always known that I am not my body, and that when we die, it's not the end. I was especially interested in psychic phenomena and that sort of thing around the age of 14. I used to, you know, play these little games with my friends where we would, you know, try to remember the little ESP cards. Would be the wiggly lines or the star and the circle and the square.
Oh, yeah.
Where you'd look at a card and concentrate on it and see if your friend could tell you what, you know, which card that you're thinking of.
Yeah.
Right. So there was a lot of that, and I was relatively accurate, but, you know, I don't know. I didn't particularly think I was gifted. I played a little bit. I'll tell you, I had a couple of experiences when I was 14 that were somewhat unusual. My best friend was going with her family on a vacation. And for whatever reason, I do not know why I said this, Tracy, just popped out of my mouth. I said, your car is going to break down. And I said, you're not going to get there anyway. I said, your car is going to break down and you're going to be stuck in the dumpy old motel on the other side of some railroad tracks. Just, you know, throw that out there. I still have the letter from my friend that I received from her several weeks later. And she said, Cindy, you make me so mad with your ESP. You were exactly right. Our car broke down in New Mexico and we are staying in this awful place on the other side of the railroad tracks.
Isn't that amazing?
It is amazing. Absolutely.
So what did you think at the time about that? What were you thinking? What did you think?
You know, I don't know what, I'm just as baffled as I am today, seriously, because I don't even know why I said it. I gave no thought to it. It just popped out of my mouth and then it happened. At age 28, I was given the book Out on a Limb by Shirley MacLaine for my 28th birthday.
Yeah.
And that opened up my curiosity again. Pandora's box flew open, and I started reading about, I read Many Mansions by Gina Cerminara, which was about reincarnation. I read about Edgar Cayce. You know, I was so thirsty. I just couldn't get enough about this information. Then, curious thing happened. I ended up literally going back to school, going back to college at age 28. I had started college at 18. I ended up being an executive secretary at the age of 20. So I had a very successful work life, let's just say, until I hit the glass ceiling, till I got to this place where I could not get from where I was to where I wanted to be without that little piece of paper. So I went back to school when Adam and Nathan, my two boys, were in diapers.
Yeah, I did that as well.
Yeah. So
How bad is that? We spend our whole lives with so much time, and then we have babies, and then we go back to college. I mean, that's crazy, isn't it?
It was crazy. You know, I went back to school when Nathan was 1 year old, and I got my master's degree when they were in high school.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. Good for you.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So, let's talk about, we were talking about Adam, weren't we, as a child?
And then about my interests and beliefs. So let's just say that the beliefs were present. Once I got my degree, I worked in the school system. I was a special education program specialist. Prior to that, I was a learning disability specialist, and then I went into administration for the last 16 years. So in terms of my metaphysical beliefs, they were present. However, they were not yet as germane to my life as they are now, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So you're quite aware now of stuff going on. When things happen, are you kind of, oh, yeah, I know what that is? Or is there more stuff happening to you? Obviously, you know, with the Chillin with Adam thing, that's different, right, isn't it? That's more stuff happening.
Right. I think what happens is, well, first of all, here's another piece. As soon as I found out I was pregnant with Adam, I conceived Adam on the 4th of July, 1982. And I found out I was pregnant with him on the 23rd of July. 19 days pregnant. Back then, people thought I was wacko. I mean, my mom's like, is your pancreas acting up again? You know, nobody thought you could know that soon. But I did. I had a positive pregnancy test, and by George, I knew I was pregnant with him. And so what did I do? The second it was confirmed that baby was on board, I started communicating with him. I started talking to him. I would write letters to him. I wrote a whole series of letters I called the baby Hamel letters that I tried to get published in baby magazines way back then. I had a whole stack of rejection letters. But see, I knew even then that there was something for me to do involving Adam where I would write. I knew he was going to be important. I knew that he was going to have something very important to do, and it was very fundamental. I mean, it was so fundamental that his name needed to be Adam, the first man, if that makes any sense. I mean, there's all kinds of these weird things I did based on intuition that at the time I did them, I didn't know why, and I didn't know what they meant. For instance, I can remember being extremely conscientious about taking Adam home in a car seat. That was right at the time where the laws were brand new about having to put a baby in a car seat. And I was very conscientious that he did not go home from the hospital unless he was in that car seat. And I made sure to educate them about the importance of wearing seat belts. And of course, this fun ended up being it ended up having to do with what ultimately happened. Another little piece of this is that I can remember having the thoughts about the car seat while his dad was on the way to pick us up from the hospital while I was talking on the phone with my aunt, whose birthday is January 23rd. That was the day the accident occurred.
Right.
Okay, so we are talking about a phone conversation I had on the morning of March 31st, 1983. He was born March 30th. Okay, so he's 6 hours old. I'm talking to my aunt about the new baby, and I have attention on the fact to make sure that now that Dad's on his way to pick us up, because easy birth, we got to go home right away, make sure he's got the car seat. Okay, Adam's accident happened on the 23rd of January, which was the aunt's birthday, and he wasn't wearing his seatbelt.
Really?
No. And here's the thing, Tracy, he never didn't wear his seatbelt. Adam wore his seatbelt religiously. He did.
Was he driving?
He was driving. He was driving the car, and he was alone in the vehicle. But he always wore his seatbelt all the time. Now, it's my understanding via Baker, his first spiritual interpreter, that when he got in the car that night, first of all, he had been drinking, so he wasn't thinking clearly, and he, stabbed at it to latch the seatbelt, and it didn't work, and he just didn't do it.
Yeah.
He was clearly tempting fate.
Right. Okay. Wow. Crikey. So, so let's go to the when you said in the hospital when there was certain things happened. Can we talk about those?
Sure.
That's interesting to me.
Yeah. Well, I would have to say I'll share a few things. The very first
Only
night,
share what you're happy to share. I don't want to push you and make you feel uncomfortable.
That's okay. Well, I'll share a couple of different ways.
Yeah.
First of all, when a patient has been declared clinically dead, even if they're still on life support, they are still hooked up to monitors that measure, say, their blood oxygen level, their respiratory rate, their heart rate. So there's these numbers on a machine. But because the body is not functioning the normal way, the numbers don't mean what they would mean if the person was not clinically dead. Does that make any sense? For instance,
yes,
a normal heart rate,
yeah.
a normal heart rate, a resting heart rate would say be 80. Okay, so the accident occurred in the wee hours of a Sunday morning. So Sunday night, he's still in the process of being evaluated to find, so we know what's going on there. And I already knew, how this was going to come out, but he had not yet been declared clinically brain dead yet.
What, you had a gut feeling, or you'd just been told, or
I felt that soul contract kick in. I can't even tell you how. I just knew it. I knew it. In fact, as soon as I walked in the hospital, before I ever talked to the doctors, when the two nurses approached me outside of this glass room where I could see my son on life support, I asked them. She said, the doctor will be in to talk to you. And I said, does he want to talk to me about donating his organs? And they were shocked. They're like, oh, no, nothing like that. Because it was so soon. I just knew. Well, 2 nights before, I told you I had a premonition that something was going to happen that would divide my life in two, that I had been worried about losing a son. 2 nights before that, and at midnight Friday night, Adam texts like everybody on his contact list on his phone that the Moonshine Bandits were going to be playing at Windmill Cove, which was a bar in the San Joaquin County Delta. So this is out on the water, and we have treacherous tule fog here in the San Joaquin Delta. So what happened was, it was really foggy in the islands, and so he texts people telling, his friends that the Moonshine Bandits are going to be playing at Windmill Cove. Be there or be square. That's what he says. Well, it's January and it's foggy, and people just didn't come out. Adam did go, however, as we all know, but it was like be there or be square. It was like an ominous message, like this is going to be your last chance to see me.
Wow.
Yeah, it was really, really odd. But here's the funny thing. We had been talking about, was I intuitive? Yes, I was. But did I get a hit on that? No. I did not get an ominous feeling when I saw that message. And, I didn't get a hit on it. And it's like, why? Well, because I wasn't supposed to intervene. I wasn't supposed to be there. If I had been there that night, things may not have played out the way they did. And they were supposed to happen the way they were supposed to happen. The way Adam described it to me was this was planned in our soul contracts prior to either one of us incarnating, that he would leave, that we would keep in touch, and that I would write about it. So that was a soul contract. Adam did have earlier exit points in his life. He died when he was 16. He died of alcohol poisoning in the back of an ambulance. I was in the passenger seat in the front when they had to intubate him on the way to the hospital. So that is one exit point that he actually passed up and continued to live for another 11 years.
Wow.
So the way he described it to me was by January of 2011, his expiration date was up. That he was, if it hadn't been that accident, it would have been another way of leaving. And when he described another potential means of exit, let me just say that the way he left was much kinder. It was much easier for me to tolerate. So back to the machines. Later on that night, people are saying, you need to go home and you should get some rest. There's nothing more you can do. And I look up at the machine and his heart rate is 180. Now that's a fetal heart rate. Right. I knew that it was nominal. It was a heart rate in name only. And I thought, well, if you don't really mean anything anyway, Adam, I'll go home when your heart rate's 111. I'll go home. Tracy, it was a matter of minutes.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I just started talking to Greg, look around, I don't know. Wasn't not that much time hadn't gone by, and I look up and there's this heart rate, 111. I thought, okay, I guess Adam wants Mama to go home and get some rest. So I come back the next day, and he was pronounced brain dead at around 11 o'clock in the morning of severe traumatic brain injury. His hair was short, but it was probably about as long as mine is on the top. And I decided, he's not going to need it now. So, I was chopped off some little locks of his hair. And I wanted, I tied them in ribbons. So that was the plan, to just cut some locks of his hair. Well, I'm not a barber, folks, okay? So I didn't give him a fashionable new short haircut. When I was finished, my sister Rhonda, youngest sister, who is now crossed over 2 years after Adam, was at the foot of his bed that day. And I was up at the head of the bed, and then Adam is here, okay? And then there's glass walls there in the critical care unit. As soon as I finished snipping his hair, I laughed out loud. And Rhonda looked up at me like, why would you be laughing? I said, Rhonda, I just heard Adam say, Mom, what the fuck did you do to my hair? I literally heard him in my head say, Mom, what the fuck did you do to my hair? And I could not help but laugh out loud. And my sister said, well, Cindy, you won't believe the dream I had last night. She had a Chihuahua that had recently crossed over. And she said, I had a dream about Muccini. And that was the dog's name. She said, I dreamed that Muccini was wearing a tiara. And she was sitting up in a barber chair with a lot of other dogs getting her nails painted. They're like at this doggy spot. And I just laughed out loud. I said, Auntie, Adam's messing with you. I said, don't you remember that his apartment is directly above a dog groomer? Right downstairs.
Really?
Yeah. So these are the kinds of things that Adam is doing, right? So keeping in mind that the accident was caused by very dense fog. The same fog that caused the accident was still present Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Meanwhile, we have a match for Adam's heart, liver, lungs, pancreas, and kidneys. We have all of these people in need of, 2 of them were in need of life-saving transplants. Actually, 3 of them. So they're waiting for Adam's organs, and these planes cannot fly in because the fog is just too dense. So by Wednesday, we get a call from Cedars-Sinai where the patient who was waiting for Adam's heart was, and they said, this person is rapidly going downhill, and they're no longer going to be eligible for the transplant if we can't get the heart in time. So they asked my permission to transport Adam by ambulance to Stanford. So Greg and I agreed, and we were going to follow the ambulance by car. And as soon as we agreed to that and we were setting things in motion, all of a sudden there's a flurry, and all these people start heading toward the room, and they said Cedars-Sinai just got clearance to land in Stockton. So they were sending a plane to Stockton to collect the heart. So that meant they were going to take him and collect all the organs, and it was just going to happen. So then a nurse says to me, keeping in mind, I have been at the head of his bed Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and now it's like 3 o'clock on Wednesday. And she said, are you ready for this? I mean, this was what we were waiting for. We already knew as of Monday, how this was going to end up. And, when she said, were you really prepared to say goodbye? And I stopped and thought a minute, and one of my other sisters, Vicky, was also interested in things of a metaphysical nature. Vicky, Rhonda, and I all shared these beliefs, and Vicky had been texting me, giving me messages from somebody who is a friend of hers who is a Facebook psychic. And I said, she had been offering to ask for a message. So I texted my sister and I said, does Adam have a message? And she texted me back and she said, "What is your question?" And I said, "I don't have a question. Does he have a message?" And then I put the phone back in my pocket. So about a half hour later, the whole transplant team is there, and the walls start rolling back. The glass walls open, and they release the brake on the bed, and I just start pushing like I did 28 years before. I pushed his bed out of the critical care unit, out the doors and down the hall to the doors of the operating unit. And at that point, that was where I'm supposed to say goodbye. And I feel a buzzing in my pocket. And I am wearing this coat. You would have thought I was a movie star. Gold lame jacket with fur around it. It's baby fat. It's a coat that Adam talked me into buying. I was shopping with Adam, and I'm wearing this rock star coat, pushing his bed to the doors. I feel the buzzing in my pocket. The doors open up, and I just kept pushing. So they kept walking. I thought, if I keep pushing, as long as I'm not losing it, I promised Adam, before I pushed that bed out of the room, I kissed him on the forehead and I promised him not to cry. It was like, if I lose it now, I am going to get kicked off the most important team I have ever been on. If this is going to happen, I'm not going to be the victim here. I'm not going to fall to pieces screaming and crying while you tear my kid away from me. By God, if I'm giving him back, I am giving him back. Yeah. So I pushed him through that door, down the hall, turned left till we got to the room where his organs were taken from him, and that is where I said goodbye. And I looked down at my watch. It was 3:30 p.m. He was born at 3:25 a.m. It was like, he'd been here 5 minutes. Anyway, I look up, and I am the only one with dry eyes. I mean, I don't know how to, Adam described it during an interview that we did with the metaphysical moms, and they said, "How did you do it?" Adam said she had to turn her heart into a rock. Oh. I had to get through that time. So Greg and I are in the car, and we're on our way to my mom's house, and it's the only day of the year. It's January 26th, the only day of the year where there are 2 birthdays on the same day. The day he gave life to 5 other people. My stepdad, Jim, and my niece, Lauren, were both born on January 26th. So we're on the way over there, and I feel my pocket buzz again, and I take it out. And the text message from my sister, from the psychic, the message from Adam was, she goes, "Well, here's the message, but it doesn't make any sense to me." He said, "I would never trade places."
Oh, bless. Oh.
And when she said to me, "Are you ready for this?" I said to the nurse, "I really think Adam is where he wants to be." And my question to Adam was, "Are you where you want to be?" Remember, she said, "What's your question?" And I wouldn't say it. My question was, "Are you where you want to be?" And his answer was, "I would never trade places."
Wow. How did that make you feel?
It made me feel like he was where he wanted to be. It made me feel like it was okay to let him go.
Yeah.
The other messages that I had received from my sister were to accept and to allow. But those came too soon. She sent me those messages, prior to his being declared brain dead, so I wasn't ready to hear that yet. So I was able to accept and allow, and in keeping in mind that he dropped the numbers to tell me to go home. He asked me, "What the fuck did you do to my hair?" He's sending me this message. And they just kept coming. They just kept coming. And the bottom line was, it's like, keeping in mind that I started communicating with him as soon as I found out I was pregnant with him. It was like, if you can't be where I am anymore, by God, I am going to figure out how I can be where you are. And so that became my goal. That became my goal, to be able to transcend the human body, to transcend these self-imposed limitations, of what we think we are, and figure out what we really are.
So had you been thinking about that beforehand? Or
yes.
You had. It wasn't like suddenly you started thinking, "Oh my God."
To the point that I think my mom thought I was a little bonkers. When Adam and Nathan were like 1 and 2, Right, not too long after I had started reading Genus and Renera, Many Mansions, and about Edgar Casey, we had a friend who was going to die, and we made this pact that when she crossed over, that she would send me a message letting me know she was still there. So yeah, I was really into this. And what waylaid it? It was my career. I went back to school and got an advanced degree and, went to work for the school system. And that really kept me too busy to focus on things of a metaphysical nature. Now, keeping in mind, I took my kids to Unity Church, a non-denominational church that does believe in things of a metaphysical nature. So this was just the way I lived my life and the way I believed, if that makes any sense. But I hadn't lost anybody as close to me as my son, where I wanted to keep in touch. Now, by that time, my dad had crossed over, but I had sort of a traumatic childhood in terms of, where my dad was concerned. So I wasn't trying to keep in touch with him. Okay, so I didn't begin my exploration with they're still here and with desiring to continue a relationship with the loved one who had crossed over until my son crossed over.
Right. Okay. So what happened then? So did it take you? Were you grieving for a long time, or did you just kick in with this? I've got to try and contact him.
Well,
and that helped
both,
through, kind of thing.
Both, hand in hand. I mean, of course, the very first thought when you wake up every morning, is that he's not still here. I mean, it's just crushing grief. It's like an undertow that's going to suck you down and drown you before you can even put your feet on the floor. So it took me a while before I could even get up. And then, of course, my goal every day was just to be okay that day. I mean, I did take a leave of absence from work, and, I didn't know how long I needed to be gone. I wasn't sure. How long? My boss asked me when I was coming back, I'm like, I don't know. How long does it take when you lose a child? How long do you need? So, he crossed over in January, and like I said, I was working for a school district, so I did not go back the rest of that school year. I took the rest of the school year off. And you want to hear something, kind of another little funny coincidence? Before I started the next school year, it was like I needed my tools, or my accoutrement, if you will, my things that I take with me. I've got, rings and bracelets. Oh, these are all talisman. They all have jobs, folks. If you want to know about my jewelry, don't ask me unless you've really got time to hear about it, because every single thing has a story. Okay, so that said, preparing to go back to work, I needed a new briefcase, and I needed something that made me happy. I'm going to go over and grab it because I got to show it to you. It's so cute. So cool.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Okay, so I go online and I find this company called Urban Junket, and it's such a great company. They are making these really awesome bags out of recycled soda bottles.
Fantastic.
Right? So this is beautiful briefcase, beautiful, cheerful color, and it's all made out of recyclable material.
Oh.
And so I buy this in the summer of 2011, preparing to go back to work, thinking that this will help me, be cheerful carrying this pink bag. Do you know, in February 2014, 2.5 years later, I'm at the I Can Do It conference, sponsored by Hay House in San Jose, with Wayne Dyer.
Yeah, Wayne Dyer, good old Wayne Dyer.
And guess what? This bag is made by his daughter, Tracy.
No, really?
Kidding. No kidding. Now, keeping in mind, I researched this bag, so I knew it was made by this lovely young lady named Tracy Dyer, and I was surprised to see Tracy sitting at a table in the hallway at this I Can Do It conference. And, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I finally put two and two together that she's actually Wayne's daughter.
Wow, how fantastic. I love moments like that.
I know. It was wonderful. Yeah. I mean, it was even more fantastic because then when we went into the room, now this was Sunday morning, and Doreen Virtue was the keynote speaker. So she's the first one to speak that morning, and she's talking to an audience of, I don't know, say 5,000 people at the San Jose Convention Center. And she's going like this while she's talking. I can see her watching something. And I had this feeling that Adam was there and that he was going to bring attention to himself. Pretty soon she stops and she says, okay, she goes, who is the mother of the boy who died because he couldn't see? she's trying to put it together. Well, remember there was fog.
Yeah.
And Greg, my husband, sitting next to me, he grabs my hand and he pulls it up in the air like this. And so she sends this young gentleman down, and she gives me this deck of cards that she created with James Van Praagh. Messages from heaven, I think. I'd have to look and see exactly what they are, but they're basically messages that, cards to pull to get a message from your loved one. And she said, you can use these cards if you want to communicate with your son. And I said, actually we are communicating and we are writing a book. So we talked about the book, and then she asked me to meet with her after. So Greg and I met with Doreen and her husband Michael after her keynote speech. But it was really interesting. She said that Adam was literally, I think my face is frozen. Let me fix it.
It has.
She said that Adam was literally surfing the energy of the room.
Wow, fantastic. And you've been communicating directly since before that with him?
The first messages I received from him through, I don't want to say a medium, because she wasn't a medium. She was the facilitator of a breath work retreat that I participated in May. Her name is Ishana Solaris.
Right.
And so clarity breath work is her healing modality. It's amazing. So I attended this retreat, and he came in.
Did he?
Yeah, he came in.
Tell me what happened.
Well, let's see. I believe when he first came in, he was wearing an Indian headdress.
Right.
And that was interesting because I had his memorial service videoed, and on the DVD of his memorial service, there is a little Lakota Indian prayer on the DVD and an image of Adam at 8 years old wearing an Indian headdress that he'd created. She said, he's singing a song. I said, what's he singing? She said, he's singing I Shot the Sheriff by Eric Clapton.
Yeah. And
then she goes, oh, I didn't know that. And I said, what? She said, he just told me it's not by Eric Clapton, it's by Bob Marley.
Really?
Now, see, is that crazy? So we get the phone and look it up. Sure enough, it's by Bob Marley. So if you think that made some headway with me, that she's, giving me this message from my son, and he's bringing through information that we did not know. So I thought this was really interesting. So during the several days that I spent at the retreat, I had a number of people, ask me if I had ever considered being a spiritual teacher or, a healer. And I thought a spiritual teacher is a minister, and I am not a religious person. As I shared my experience in terms of organized religion, that doesn't work with me. It's not a match.
No.
Spirituality.
No experience of it.
Absolutely. The spiritual piece, yes. Religious, organized religion, no. Now, I don't have a problem with anybody else for whom it does work. It just doesn't for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, so that was the first time that he came through to you. And then how did the channeling start with, Chilling with Adam, the series?
Okay.
How did all that become about?
Well, as a result of that retreat, I did learn that it did resonate with me to learn about healing work. So the woman who facilitated the retreat, Ishana Solaris, who is a Reiki master, became my Reiki teacher. So I received my Reiki 1 and 2 training from Ishana over the course of the rest of that year. And each time I met with Ishana, messages from Adam came through. But I did not have him channeled directly by a medium for the purpose of having a conversation with him until I went to Sedona to do my Reiki Master training in July of 2012. Okay, so that was a while, we're going now from May 2011 to July 2012. So I practiced the Reiki for, a year or so before I do the Master training. And I go to the International Center for Reiki Training in Sedona, which is at a place called Peace Place. at Peace Place, they have a resident psychic, this woman named Baker Gendron. She is actually more of a shaman, than a psychic.
Yeah.
But I was hearing all this, other people that were in my class were having readings with Baker, and I was hearing all this really cool stuff, experiences other people had. And Greg and I decided, we thought it would be fun to get a reading with Baker, because I can maybe talk to Adam, and Greg would try to get in touch with his dad. And so my first reading directly, where I was able to have a conversation with him, was through Baker, and that was in July of 2012.
Right, and was that how it kind of comes across on the Chillin Adam stuff? Is that you can literally have a conversation with him? Was it like that then?
Yeah. Yes, we were, it was amazing, the conversations I was able to have with him. It's kind of funny how it works now, because he just really blew our minds, keeping in mind that, when you're a medium and you're a channel, you still have to go through your own filter, which is your own belief system. And at the time, Baker's belief system was not, let's just say her horizons were not as wide as they became once she started channeling Adam, because he started bringing through all these galactic energies.
Wow.
So, it was fully.
So when you say galactic energies, explain what that is.
I'm talking about entities that are incarnated off of Earth. People who are beings that are incarnated in a form other than as human. I also learned that Adam and I have been incarnated as other types of beings way more often than we have been incarnated as humans on Earth. That there are many, many of us who are here on Earth now. I would say you probably, if the word starseed sounds familiar,
yeah,
that's probably how you're going to hear them described. And what is a starseed? A starseed is somebody whose soul did not originate on Earth. They are people, for the most part, I believe, who have already ascended, who have come back on this timeline to help with the ascension of planet Earth. And what does that mean? Ascension simply means raising vibrations, raising the vibrations of the Earth, raising the vibrations of the people on the Earth, healing duality.
That's stuff that Dolores Cannon talks about, isn't it?
Sure, yes.
Have you heard of Dolores Cannon? You heard of her?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. That's what started me on this whole thing, really. I started listening to her. And from that, just went on to other stuff. But yeah.
Oh, yes. I've got, I think, 4 volumes of her Convoluted Universe books. Once Adam crossed over, I was a voracious reader anyway. I tell you what, here, I'm just going to give you an example of how I spend my day. I know. Prepare yourself. I am the world's biggest nerd geek. Okay, can you see my bookshelf?
Wow, look at that. Fantastic.
Tracy, that's only one. And that's my most recent shelf. And the day I bought it, I filled it up that very day.
Oh.
I've got one of these houses where, I would like to say, come into the parlor and have a cup of tea. But I'd have to say, but don't sit on that stack of books. Oh, wait, don't sit on that. Oh, not that. Oh, here, I'm sorry. Let me move these books.
So you read all the time?
All the time. When I'm not reading a book, I'm listening to a book. I am just, I can't learn enough. Yeah.
Do you look up a lot of stuff online as well? Do you find lots of features and articles and things online?
Yes, that too. I mean, I'm just, any possible way to receive knowledge and information I'm going to get. I mean, I wish I could eat the books. Just sit down and eat the book and get it over with. Don't waste my time for weeks and weeks to get this information. But you know what? Here's the funny thing. I have found that a lot of the knowledge in those books is already in me. It's already in there. And the funny thing is, it's like I just have to buy the book and it just starts surfacing. You hear people talk about receiving downloads. It's almost like this information gets implanted in there, and you're just like, whoa, what happened there? You feel like something happened, but you don't know what it is. It's like you don't all of a sudden know something you didn't know a minute ago. But what happens with me, somebody will ask me a question about something that I don't think I know anything about, and by God, I know way more than I thought I knew, and they'll start asking me more about it. I'm like, wait a minute, I'm hearing this for the first time myself.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
It's almost like it just awakens something that's already there. So, that just brings me right back to, they tell you not to seek outside yourself. I think maybe you need to do a certain amount of that, but most of what we need is already in here. For me, the seeking outside served to wake up what was already inside.
That's what we're raised on, isn't it? The seeking outside thing. I mean, why aren't children educated about all this stuff?
Oh my gosh, I have something to share with you. I'm so glad you asked me that, because I wanted to remember to share that this morning. During one of the sessions with Baker, I said, it would be kind of fun to talk to my higher self. So she goes, okay. And she's like, okay, well, let's call in Cindy's higher self. And then she starts laughing. She goes, oh my God, Cindy, you're not going to believe this. The cutest little girl is here. She goes, she looks just like you, but she's like only 5 or 6. She's this little girl. And I said, well, what's her name? And she said, Baker says, she says her name is Sin Sin.
Oh.
And you want to hear something funny, Tracy? I told my aunt about this, and she said, that's funny. She said, that's what you used to call yourself as a little girl.
Really?
That's what she said, yes. Now, the funny thing is, my mom doesn't remember me referring to myself as Sin Sin, but my aunt does. However, so Baker said, the little girl named Sin Sin is here. And I said, well, Sin Sin, thank you for coming forward, but I have some questions for a big person. And she said, well, go ahead and ask. And I said, so I can ask you these questions? And she said, sure, why not? And so I start asking her these questions that I would ask any adult, and she's just forthcoming with the wisdom of the ages, and I can't even believe this child knows all this. And I said to her, Sin Sin, how do you know all these things? And you know what she said to me? She said, we come in with it, but adults teach it out of us.
Oh God, that's awful, isn't it?
We come in with it, but they teach it out of us.
Yeah, God. I was watching that there's a program on in this country called The Life of a 4-year-old, The Life of a 5-year-old. And what they do, they have these kids in a garden, which is all set up with cameras, and they just film them playing where they don't know that they're being filmed. It's all done properly, and the teachers come in. And the amount of kids have about their hearts, and one little girl had fallen out with this boy she was playing with. They'd fallen out, and she was just saying, I'm just so sad, my heart feels like it's broken. And they've got such insight into, just the stuff. Learn it all again, don't we? Because they're still very young, and it's just so open. And it's just, I'm sure it will eventually, generation after generation, it will eventually be that kids are raised up on this stuff. It's kept with them. Do you know what I mean? It's not taken away from them.
I do.
But it'll be a long time away from now, I think.
It's happening now. It's amazing how many kids are being born awake. It's going to revolutionize the educational system, because when you have kids who are born telepathic, they have built-in lie detectors. So they know that the history that we're being taught is not the truth. Now, fortunately, a lot of what is in need of healing is coming to light, and there are going to be a lot of changes in the world by the time these kids go to school. But it is already happening.
It is, definitely. I mean, the kids that are born, like the ones that are labelled as autistic, who can play pianos, without being taught anything, or draw fantastic, architectural drawings, having not had any training. They're the ones, aren't they, that are coming through?
They're
the
amazing.
Ones that are just spiritually advanced and stuff.
One of the children in my program, when I was a program specialist, he was, I think, 8 years old. He had autism. And he could draw these fantastic scenes of a city in great detail, in 3D perspective. Just unbelievable.
Yeah. What was his name?
Jose.
Oh, okay, because there's a guy that lives in England. He's an adult now, but he started off, and he used to do amazing pictures of London, like an architect architect would draw.
Absolutely.
But he's an adult now, and he's selling all his paintings and things, his pictures.
Absolutely. So, interestingly enough, this child was in a special day class. And we're like, these kids, there is no special day world. When kids who have special needs graduate from high school, they live in the same world we do. So they really do need to be educated as much as possible alongside their non-disabled, if you will, peers. So we got this boy into an arts magnet school.
Wow, fantastic.
Yeah.
How wonderful.
Yeah. So
how old is he? Still a boy, is he? Growing up now?
At this point in time, let me think, how old would he be? I'm going to say that he's probably about 14 now, so he is still in school.
Yeah, wow. It's definitely all going the right way, I think, Cindy, isn't it?
Absolutely. He's just one. He's just one of many children who are differently abled. Let's just say that, differently abled. They have amazing gifts. They're just different than the rest of ours. Again, you have you go back to those labels. Now the thing is with special education, because of the way children qualify for special ed, they have to be assessed and stick a label on them, to be able to serve their needs. But hopefully we will move away from the need to label a child beyond just identifying what the needs are.
Definitely. Yeah, absolutely. So with your communication with Adam now, has it made you feel differently about, because, people are raised to think that people die and that's it, you don't see them ever again, and there's that awful sadness and, loss and everything. How is that different for you, and that you're communicating with him now? How does that feel differently? I often wonder that.
Well, first of all, probably the thing that made the greatest difference for me is I know that Adam is not grieving his life. He is not grieving the future that he didn't have. He's not, he's not sorry that he's not here. He's not saying, oh, I didn't get to marry, I didn't get to do this, I didn't get to do that. There is no sense of that with him. In fact, even to the point of maybe reviewing the details of the accident in my mind. Adam's accident occurred sometime after 2 o'clock in the morning, and he was ejected from the vehicle, and he literally lay outside in the cold in the road until 9 o'clock the next morning.
Oh my God.
And if you think a mother can't trip on that, and dig a deep, dark hole to climb into, Adam wouldn't let me. He just plain would not let me. It's so interesting. It's like whenever I mentally wanted to go to these deep, dark places to torture myself, because it really is about, how much do we need? How badly do we need to go there? He's like, he just wouldn't let me do it. I can remember one day I'm sitting out in the backyard looking at the lake, and I got a little teary-eyed remembering how he liked to fish there. And it's like I could feel him say to me, Mom, I'm here.
Yeah,
I'm already,
wow.
You're looking at the lake and you're remembering me in the fishing, and I'm present. Now, if you're going to allow the tears to come, you need to realize that it's because you're processing your feelings. It's not because the tears are required to summon me. It's like he chose that moment to show me that I'm not here because you're sitting there looking at the lake crying for me. I'm here because you were there thinking about me, and your thoughts summoned me. You don't have to cry. That's for you. You can cry as long as you need to, as long as you choose to, but you don't have to cry to call me to you. And so, that does bring me to a point. You do not have to have a super high frequency for your loved ones to try to communicate with you. They're going to try no matter what. However, the less distracted you are with your own grief and the higher your frequency is, the more open to receiving the communication you are. If that makes any sense.
Yeah. How do we raise our frequencies then?
Well, I would have to say the very first thing in terms of when you are raising it as a result of having lost a loved one is to process the grief, to process the feelings. Emotions are called emotions for a reason. Emotions are made of very dense energy, and they are meant for us to experience them and have them move through us. Emotion. You process the feelings, you sit with them, you feel them, and then they move through you. If you don't feel them and you don't process them, they literally get stuck. I mean, we have our anatomy, hand, arm, head, right? We also have subtle anatomy that is created entirely of energy, with energy meridians, and we have an entire subtle energy system in our bodies that is densely packed with all these feelings and memories and thoughts and things through our whole lives that we haven't processed. So whether you've lost a loved one or been the victim of something that you're having a hard time moving through, processing the dense energies will help. And energy medicine is huge with that. So for me, it was Reiki. Learning about Reiki and learning how to clear my own energy field, and then also helping others.
Right. Okay. So that's a good start then. Get Reiki.
I would say, yeah, for me anyway, a good start was to learn an energy healing modality, and Reiki is probably the one that's most widely known. Reiki is not the only modality that I use, but it's probably the most widely known.
Okay. All right. Well, that would be good for people anyway that are watching. That
absolutely
need to do that.
Well, and then Adam and I started working together. It's like so many crazy things happened. My sister, or youngest sister, the one who was at the foot of the bed the day I cut Adam's hair, she crossed over suddenly and unexpectedly for the most part. And I say for the most part because I had a premonition she'd be leaving 5 days before she left, and I asked Adam about it during a session with Baker, and he confirmed during the session that she would be leaving, and it would probably be about 6 months. She was 51. She did not have a terminal illness. She had some fibromyalgia, which was very painful for her. It definitely diminished the quality of her life. She also suffered from alcoholism and drug addiction, but she was in program, so she was clean and sober at the time. However, I guess she just made the choice to leave. And the night she left, I had been trying to communicate with Adam directly myself. So I was sitting up in bed, Greg was asleep, and I just sort of mentally opened my crown and was just kind of feeling, we are a radio signal, or like a reception tower, if you will, right? So, I'm just like, beep, 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 trying to see what's out there, right? So I'm opening the crown, just like, whoa, what's going on there? And all of a sudden, I see my sister's image in my mind's eye, and I hear her say, "Cindy, it's Rhonda." And I'm just shocked, and I said, "Rhonda, what are you doing in my head?" She said, "I'm in heaven." And oh my God, did that freak me out? I'm like, "What are you doing in heaven?" She said, "It's so beautiful." And I mean, the first thing that came to my mind was, that's what they all say.
Yeah.
And she is dancing and spinning and leaping. And if I had to catch her, keep in mind, she's a little image in my mind. I would have had to have a butterfly net to get her. Okay. It was like that, but it's in my mind. And I'm just like, what the hell? And I'm like trying to think what to even say next when she says, "I'm with Adam." And when she said that just freaked me out. My eyes flew open and I started getting all Freudian on myself. I got a degree in psychology. If you're fantasizing your loved one is dead, why are you trying to off them? What's going on there? So I'm getting all Freudian on myself. I'm like, why am I thinking Ron is dead? But then again, keeping in mind, I'd had that premonition 5 days earlier, so I don't know what to do with this. And I decide, well, I wake up Greg and tell him, and then I make a decision. I'm going to call Rhonda in the morning and tell her about this. At 8:30 the next morning, my mom called to tell me that Rhonda's boyfriend called to say that Rhonda had died in her sleep.
Oh my God.
No kidding. Oh, yeah. And it gets even crazier. 2 days later, our oldest nephew committed suicide in Canada. And I had a session with Adam and Baker scheduled for 10 minutes beyond the time we get the phone call about Wesley committing suicide. In 10 minutes, I have a session with Baker. And knowing Baker's a shaman, I'm like, okay, I need to check on Wesley to see how he's doing, to see if he has crossed over. Because one of the things I heard about this amazing woman named Baker was that, she helps people cross over. And I didn't know what does that even mean? I thought when you die, you just die. You go to the light. Being done. Die, tunnel, light, everything's good. Well, I found that it is not exactly that way. What happened was we learned that Wesley was not crossed over. So I assisted Baker with crossing over our nephew that day.
Wow.
And then the very next time I was made aware of a soul in need of crossing, Baker was sick and I had to solo. So Adam has assisted me now with crossing over a number of souls who were sort of stuck in transition.
So what do you know what happens there when they get stuck? Do you know what kind of goes on with that?
Well, there's a number of different reasons. In Wesley's case, Wesley suffered from a mental health diagnosis. And at the time that he committed suicide, he was experiencing extreme paranoia, and he was terrified. And he was still in that same exact mindset that caused him to end his life at the time we were trying to connect with him. So he was terrified. He wouldn't let us near him. So I literally...
I thought that when you pass over, though, all that goes.
It does, but not immediately. See, it did go, but after he required assistance. I had to call in my father-in-law, who was his grandfather. Now, my father-in-law and I never met face to face. He died let's see, we were married July 7th. He died July 23rd. And so I didn't get to meet him prior to his passing. However, I called him in to help Baker and I cross him over, because neither Baker, Adam, nor I could get through to him. It's interesting because, keeping in mind in the astrals, things are different than they are here, where I could talk to him so he could hear me. Bottom line is, when I called in his grandfather, he came in and he picked him up. He was about, say, 38, I think, when he crossed over, and he literally put him on his lap and he rocked him in the rocker. He rocked him and rocked him in the rocker until Wesley calmed down and he could listen. And then we told him that we were gonna cross him into the light. And then Baker said, okay. She goes, they're going now. Do you see them? They're up out of the chair and they're walking away. And in my mind's eye, I could see them. But in my mind's eye, the boy was on the left side and the grandpa, it was like I saw younger Wesley and grandpa was over here. And to me, it just was backwards. And I said to Baker, I said, yeah, I can see him. I said, but they look backwards. She goes, what do you mean? I go, I don't know. It just seems like he's on the wrong side. She goes, well, it didn't make any difference. But here's the funny thing. I learned later that the way that my father-in-law bonded with his grandchildren was by rocking them on his lap in the rocking chair.
Really?
Rocked all the grandkids all their lives. That is the way they bonded. And here's another piece. Grandpa was left-handed. So he was on... You see what I'm saying? It was backwards. I'm left-handed too. Interesting thing, and Baker's like, it doesn't matter. No, it doesn't matter, but you see, that was a little synchronicity. That was a validation to me, because I didn't know he was left-handed, and I learned later. So it makes perfect sense that it would look backwards to me. So interesting thing that happened, though, was when we crossed over Wesley, it was like, if you want to look in terms of astrology, the planet Uranus is the planet of eccentricity, upheaval, and rebellion. Uranus was all over that. That energy was just like all around. It was the same energy present when Rhonda decided to cross as when Wesley decided to cross. Keep in mind, it was December, say, 10th, 11th, and 12th. It's a time of the year where people just have a, some people who suffer from really dense energies are having a terrible time at the holidays. So this was a time where there was a lot of energy in need of releasing. So the bottom line was, we just sort of opened it to souls present in need of crossing. And Tracy, we must have crossed over 300 at once. I mean, it was just like, there was this tremendous burst of light where all these souls just went with Wesley and Frank. And it was just an incredible thing to experience. It was my very first experience of anything like this. And then, like I said, the next time it came to light that there was somebody in need of crossing. Now, Wesley needed assistance because he had a mental health diagnosis and he was in the middle of a paranoid episode where he was terrified, and energetically he was not reachable. And what sometimes people who die suddenly get stuck because they don't know they're dead yet. And that happened, another time. One weekend we were out at our property and a scorpion ran over my foot. And once you start studying shamanism, you don't look at the world the same way. If you see an animal, you want to know what animal it was, what is the message? Was it on the ground? Was it in the air? Was it from the left or the right? Was it going up? Was it going down? I mean, everything has meaning, right? So I know that there's some meaning to this scorpion. So I look it up, and sure enough, a scorpion is a possible sign of a soul in need of being crossed over. But I didn't know anyone who had crossed. The next day, Greg came home from work, and he found out that one of his work friends, a gentleman who was in his early 50s, died suddenly on Friday after coming home from work. So when he went to work on Monday, he had learned about this sudden death. He told me the man's name. I knew immediately to check in on him. And I asked him, what's going on with you? And I just felt like he was stuck, but I couldn't pin down what was going on. So I use this little application that I have on my iPad and my phone. It's called Ghost Radar by a company called Spud Pickles. I think the application is free, and if it's not free, it doesn't cost much, and it is pretty dang cool because it can speak in single words, but it also has little letters that can scroll across the screen. So let's say it'll give you a word, and then you might say, well, okay, who's giving me this word? They can give you initials. So this is one of many tools I use, and I found for the purposes of communicating with this gentleman, I said, give me one word to describe your situation, and the word he gave me was stuck.
Wow. Was it his initials?
No, his initials were TS. Now, I don't recall if he even gave me his initials because I knew it was him. His name was Tom. Okay, I knew it was him. So I waited for Greg to go to bed that night, and I sat down with a candle. I often use a candle when I cross them over because I have them use the flame to show me if they're ready or not. By making having them manipulate the flame, much the same way I did when I was 14. But now I don't play with this stuff. I do not ever wish anybody harm, even in jest.
No,
I don't play with this stuff anymore. So I used the candle to communicate with him. I was not successfully able to cross him over that first night because he still didn't realize he was dead.
Wow.
Now, interesting thing, I had a cousin who died suddenly of a heart attack at age 54. And he didn't cross over immediately either. I was not aware that he did not cross over until later. However, he did show me that when you cross suddenly and unexpected, sometimes you don't go immediately into the light. So I was able to use him as an example. So what happened was I continued communicating mentally with this gentleman named Tom from Monday to Wednesday. His service was going to be held on Thursday, and my husband was going to go. So for like 2-3 days, I'm having a conversation in my mind with good old Tom, telling him about my cousin, who had also died suddenly, and how, he didn't think he was dead either, and he hung around for like a year and a half until he went to the light. The bottom line is, once the concept of the light occurs to you, it's almost like as soon as you know it, you go, right? Or as soon as the object between that's keeping you there is no longer present. For instance, another soul that I assisted in crossing over, it was a suicide, and the family didn't know it was a suicide. They believed it was a car accident. And the person was a veteran, and he had a great deal of guilt about what he had experienced, but he also was Catholic and was afraid of going to hell. So that was why he was stuck. So I had to talk with him about the fact that he wasn't going to be punished and about what indeed would happen when he crossed over. And what I was directed to tell him was that he would be regressed to the age, to the age of a child, where he could just go and play and be a little boy again and not have any more worries in the world. The angels would take him for healing and that he would not be punished.
I wonder what it's like when they're stuck. What the sort of environment's like, wherever they're stuck.
I don't know that it's the same for everyone. What my cousin told me was that, well, first of all, you have to realize that they have no sense of time. Time is only in the third dimension. So even though for me, I experienced 1.5 years between the time he died and between the time Baker and Adam and I crossed him, I experienced 1.5 years of Earth time. I don't think he had any idea how much time had gone by. But what he said was that he could feel people's feelings and he could hear their thoughts, but he was kind of stuck in an in-between state where he wasn't able to communicate with them. So it was more about he had limitations still that you don't normally have once you're in the light. However, as soon as we crossed him over, all that changed. So it's just a matter of as soon as the spirit is ready to let go and move on, it's just that as soon as the awareness comes to them and they're ready, it just happens. However, they do sometimes require assistance and they can be stuck for any number of reasons. Sometimes they're not ready to leave. For instance, Nicole Brown Simpson, she stayed through OJ's trial. She wanted to make sure her kids were okay.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I remember that. Was that an interview with you and Adam?
No, that was Lisa and Eric and Emma, I think.
That was a good one.
I was packing to go to this Channeling Eric event, and in spite of the fact that her Facebook page said she was from Detroit, I'm thinking she's in Michigan. I'm like in mid-pack. I've got a shirt I'm about to stick in the suitcase. I throw the shirt on the bed, run out of the room, and I type to Sarah and say, by any chance, are you going to the Channeling Eric event in Houston in January? And she's like, oh, yeah, I live in Houston.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah, so really, that is how I met. This was like on a Thursday before we catch the flight, and I'm literally sitting at Sarah's dinner table the following Monday having dinner with Sarah, her husband, Larry, and Carrie Silver Lining Minna. And that was after a whole weekend at Elisa's.
Wow, amazing.
This is Eric and Adam's doing.
Fantastic stuff, yeah.
I mean, that's how spirit works.
Yeah.
Amazing. When they worked together, when Adam and Eric started working together, just everything shook loose. Now we have the YouTube channel and the blog. I still haven't finished the book, still working on it, but, we're just having all these experiences that I'll eventually write about, and, who knows? But that's, how Chillin' with Adam got started, and there's just a lot of mothers like Sarah and Elisa and I mean, and there's a number of others who are doing this type of work where we're communicating with our sons for the most part on the other side and bringing through information that are helping other folks learn how to do death differently.
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds fantastic. Really does. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing really nice of you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Oh, gosh, you're welcome, Tracy, and thank you so much for inviting us.
It's been lovely chatting with you, and hopefully we'll chat again soon, yeah?
Yes.
We'll keep in touch by Facebook.
Absolutely. Let's do that. Thank you so much, Tracy. Bye, everybody.
That's okay. Happy reading.
Thank you.
See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.